Okay.
Since the radical left cannot win at the ballot box with the majority of Americans. Most of their ideas are rejected, except for in places like San Francisco and New York.
Right.
They have to import people that then are, on day one, are dependent on the federal government.
That are socialists.
You know, well, many of them are fleeing socialism, then they're coming to a capitalist country that has been tricked into giving away free stuff.
Right.
I mean, y'all talk to Border Patrol all the time, but the thing for me is, if you look at like I still can't get over the fact that somebody surrendered to me yesterday or 2 days ago.
Yeah. Right.
My wife, we were sitting there with a news crew,
right?
And then all of a sudden 6 Brazilians just show up, and they're like,
right.
Really? And I go, yeah, it happens all the time. Literally, middle of the week, during the day, you just watch the flight schedules from Brazil or from Ciudad Mexico. And and they get there.
They get their times. Yep.
But then so that they were all dealing with Border Patrol, and they just surrendered to us.
Yep.
And my wife speaks enough pidgin Portuguese because she grew up in Argentina, so she was able to talk to him a little bit in Portuguese. It's like, where are you from? Well, and identified the city. Why are you here? Well, I'm very poor and I need a job.
Right.
That's it. That's what his, and I believe that was an honest answer. That I'm poor and I need a job.
Right.
And you know what? I don't fault a father for wanting to go provide for his family. Every father wants to do it, but that doesn't justify asylum fraud.
Right.
That means, that's what we would need a guest worker program for. So you leave your kids home where it's safe. You leave your family, you come here, you work, and then you go home. That's what we do in the agricultural visa process. That's what we do. We have an established process to do that. And just because you don't like how that process is working is not justification for engaging in asylum fraud. Because it's very clear, this guy's coming from Brazil. He's got 2 children with him.
Right.
He's going to go at taxpayer expense. He's going to get a free trip to Boston, get settled there in Boston, then send one of the girls back so that the mom can repeat the asylum fraud process, cross back. Literally, it's probably going to cross back over the exact same spot in about 3 months.
Right.
And what you also find is a lot of these kids are getting recycled.
Okay.
So
no, wait. Let's elaborate on that, because that's something I in my talking points I haven't quite understood.
Okay.
So the kid comes in.
The kid comes in with a quote unquote parent.
Right.
And then what will happen is that the kid will then get recycled back to another parent.
Yeah.
So the kids will show up and be they'll get sponsored, and they keep getting sponsored by the same people. So it's a site. So
the kid comes in.
Kid comes in, takes an adult across with them.
Right.
The adult gets to say, "Oh, I'm the parent of this person."
Okay.
And then all of a sudden, the kid goes back over.
So they fly the kid back,
or somehow get the kid back over to Mexico.
Okay.
And they and so Secretary Nielsen was testifying in front of last week
Congress
about this recycling rings. Basically that they're discovering that in fact, the coyotes and the cartel refer to Border Patrol and DHS as logistics.
Okay. Yeah.
Because literally, the moment they get their human smuggling cargo 1 inch inside the United States, U.S. taxpayers pick up everything else. I mean, I was talking to Border Patrol just 2 days ago, and they were talking about that literally, the healthcare is free. Food is free, housing is free, plane ticket to where they're going is free, and because of the scrutiny, if somebody has a stomach ache, they take them to the emergency room.
Right.
And when they take them to the emergency room, they get to cut in line. They go ahead of every other citizen or resident that is waiting in the emergency room for. So your grandma's having chest pains, and an illegal immigrant gets to jump ahead of grandma. In the waiting area of the emergency room.
That's sick.
It's a totally broken system, and the taxpayers get screwed every single day. Now, is there poverty around the world? Absolutely, but it's not America's responsibility to solve all the poverty all around the world.
We got people sleeping on the street.
Yeah, I mean, here in New Mexico, unemployment on our reservations of our indigenous populations who have been here since before the United States even existed, before the conquistadors. But on our reservations here in New Mexico, unemployment's at 56%.
Wow.
At the height of the Great Depression, the worst unemployment we suffered was 33%. Most tribal leaders here in New Mexico would love to only have unemployment of 33%. Yet, in many of the Indian Health Service programs we have, you don't get sick past June because the money ran out.
Right.
I mean, my father was an orphan Indian kid in Chickasha, Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl days of the Depression.
Okay.
He was so broke, and he would tell you he was broke and not poor, because poor is a state of mind, whereas broke is a temporary insufficiency of cash flow.
Yeah.
But he was so broke that he was digging through other Indians' garbage cans for food. In 1943, he decided two things. He was sick and tired of poverty, and he was mad at the Japanese for bombing Pearl Harbor, so he joined the Navy and never looked back. By 1948, my father became the first American Indian to fly a jet.
Okay.
By 1962, he was the senior nuclear targeting strategist for all of NATO, and he worked every day of his life for what he earned, and he certainly did not fight for this country to defend the freedoms that we have, to then allow the rest of the world come in and abuse those freedoms.
Right.
So, again, there are poor people around the world. There are poor indigenous people in Guatemala and Honduras that in some case, and it may even be true that bad U.S. policies have screwed up certain parts of the world. That doesn't mean we just get to bring them all here.
Right.
We spend millions of dollars propping up tin pot dictators all around the world. We would do much better if we had a guest worker program that allowed for free movement of labor across the border, as long as you know who it is and keep track of who it is, make sure they're not bringing disease, make sure they've got a job and they're self-sustaining, and then they go home. But they come here for, let's say you do the way we do it with the agriculture workers, but not every business is seasonal. For example, roofing. Yep. If you've done roofing in the heat of the summer here in Las Cruces or Doña Ana County, it sucks. I don't want to do it, and I'm willing to pay somebody else to do it. And I'll probably pay them way more than minimum wage to do it. But it's a seasonal. It's seasonal work. So they work here for a year, go home for 3 months, and if you sequester part of the money they earn here, they only get that money when they return back to their home country, check in with the U.S. consulate, and then they get the remaining third of what they got paid.
Right.
But that is a great way to do economic development in those poor communities, in those countries, and it's way better than the stupidity that we engage in foreign aid right now, because they came here and created value. And then they send the money back home to their home country, but they send it directly to the people.
Right.
And then those people can start building their own economies there, which reduces the pressure. If we improve those economies there through market mechanisms, rather than government taking our money and then sending it to the tin pot dictators and the bureaucrats, that will actually do a better job of improving the lives of people in Central America, the Northern Triangle countries, or wherever, than what we do right now. And so our system is broken. People have figured out the loopholes. I mean, people talk about loopholes big enough you can drive a truck through. Well, these are loopholes that are big enough you can drive a whole caravan through.
That's true.
Can you go back and repeat what you had said about them actually going over there to, what's the name of that?
Okay, so if we go over the mountain here, so this is Monte Cristo Rey. You go down the mountain. So we got Monument 3 is right over here, right where an opera, the wall stops.
Right.
So you got Monument 2, then Monument 1 is at the point where Texas, New Mexico, and Old Mexico all meet.
And who visited there?
So we were all there. I mean, I've done videos from there several times, but basically what happens is Brazilians will fly into Ciudad Juarez. They will take a Mexican Uber driver to drop them off there at Monument 1. They'll walk across, and they all have their kids, and they all have their carry-on luggage. They walk across, and they say, asilo, which is asylum, both in Spanish and in Portuguese.
Just like in the videos that we saw the other day.
And basically, they're fleeing Brazil. Last time, you go to the State Department website, Brazil is not a hotbed of oppression right now.
Right.
And so my right after the first group that surrendered to Border Patrol, the group of 6, the same Uber driver went back to the airport, picked up another father with 2 children, and my wife and I we were back in our car, and they surrendered to us. I didn't even have one of your fancy badges on. Nope. But they and my wife is a legal immigrant. Her family has a history of fleeing socialism and tyranny. So her mother fled Franco in Spain. Her grandparents on her father's side fled Mussolini in Italy.
They had reason.
They emigrated to Argentina.
Yeah, right.
They then encountered socialism and oppression again with the junta, so they fled and entered the United States. But she crossed the Mexican border, the U.S. border legally at Matamoros down in McAllen.
Right.
Got her work permit, got her green card. She followed every single law along the way, and it took her 14 years to become a citizen. So she's a tougher border hawk than I am.
And you said that Pelosi had been down there?
Yes. So what I found out, I was talking to the people that own the brick factory a couple of years ago. Pelosi and Maxine Waters came to visit the border and actually went to that exact spot at Monument 1 where there's no fence, there's no wall, there's not even a pile of rocks. It is literally, you can roll your luggage across the border because it's a nice concrete paved area, and literally it's just a line of the concrete. So you can begin. I mean, you can cross the border in literally half a second.
Wow!
And it happens hundreds of times a day. You know, at the peak periods. I mean, you know, probably yesterday. You know, if you had that group of 44 going over there,
right.
there was probably at least 200 then that crossed during that, you know, a 24-hour period.
Wow!
Now, not all of them. They said about 70% of them are Brazilians.
Okay.
You know, basically the difference we have right now is we have what we call catch and release for everybody who's not from Mexico.
Right.
So if you are a Mexican single male coming here, not claiming asylum, you get returned the same day. You get processed and sent back.
Yep.
If you're from a country other than Mexico, Northern Triangle, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, or Brazil, or Venezuela, or whatever, then we don't send you back right then. We process you through the system. We hold you in a detention facility, or, you know, we give you an ankle bracelet and tell you to show up in 2.5 years. So if you go to the El Paso airport and probably rummage through the dumpsters near the airport, I'm sure you will find dozens of ankle bracelets.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, the system is broken.
Yep.
Asylum fraud is happening every single day. And if you I'm a bit of a pointy-headed academic, so I actually do have a law degree.
Yep, okay.
And if you look up the statutes, 18 U.S.C., which is the criminal code, 18 U.S.C. 1001, it's a felony to lie to a federal official. And yet everybody who shows up and claims asylum, like this guy yesterday, you know, or 2 days ago, he was going to lie and say, I need asylum. And, you know, what's he fleeing? He's fleeing poverty. I get it. But our asylum laws are not designed for economic refugees. You know, if you look at in the El Paso sector here, so everybody who is apprehended from, I don't know how far down the Rio Grande it goes, but, you know, basically like El Paso County, Hudspeth County, and it probably goes a little bit farther than that, but not quite to Del Rio.
Okay.
All the way to the end of the state line between Arizona and New Mexico.
Right.
All that's called the El Paso sector.
Okay.
And if you look at the date, so when somebody's apprehended and they claim asylum, then they are sent through a legal process. Right now, that is so backlogged that it takes 2.5 years for you to get your court date. The first thing you do is called a credible fear hearing.
Okay.
And if you fail that, you go home. That's assuming you show up. You know, only about 3% of the people are showing up. And when they do show, and part of the reason they don't show up is because they all fail. So the failure rate in the El Paso sector, only 4.3% of the credible asylum claims are successful. That means 95.7% of the people claiming asylum fail even the low threshold of credible fear.
And what do we do
it's
then?
Called fraud.
So if I go to let's say most of us aren't going to show up. But let's say I'm that one that does. Now, I show up. At that point, you're probably going to look at me and say, get out of here. They know that.
Well, again,
maybe not.
Our asylum laws are in place for people who are, you know, let's say that you are, you know, let's say you're in Syria or Lebanon and you're a Christian. You are legitimately in fear for your life because of your Christian beliefs. You know, there are people there who want to kill you only because of your religious beliefs.
Right.
That's what our asylum law is designed to protect. Because you're poor and you want a job?
Right.
That's not what the system is designed for. But because the moment you touch a foot onto U.S. soil and claim asylum, and our system's broken, that's what they're doing now in Tijuana at the San Isidro port of entry, and they just expanded it to Calexico, which is the next port of entry over. Basically, what they're now saying is, okay, fine, you can claim asylum, but you wait in Mexico until your court date.
Gotcha. Okay.
And because the fraud is so many steps in the fraud. And
so what does it cost us? Like, let's talk about, like, say, per person on average, we catch these people.
The cost in New Mexico of illegal immigration, just in New Mexico, is in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
Every year.
Every year.
Minus Border Patrol.
No, that's the federal. No, that's not including the cost of securing the border. That is the cost of
after securing
after they get here.
Yeah, after
illegal
they get
immigrants just in New Mexico, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Now, if you took that money into New Mexico, that same money that you're giving the welfare and the health insurance and all this, judges and whatever other miscellaneous expenses are incurred, if you took the current homeless population of New Mexico and applied those funds into some type of either a shelter,
aliens fraudulently claiming asylum, set foot on U.S. soil, everything's paid for by the taxpayers. Their health care, their transportation, their housing, everything.
right?
And that doesn't, and that's the people who just got here. That doesn't include all the illegal immigrants who have already who've already escaped through and into the system.
Right.
The estimation, the various different estimates, some say 11 million, some say 20 million. I mean, part of the problem, we don't know. And whenever we don't know how many people are here, that's a scary thought too.
It is a scary thought.
And, and it's not just, it is not just the human trafficking coming from Central America. Smuggled within that or intermixed within that, there are two cases going on right now of people who have been smuggling people from state-sponsored terror countries.
I was going to ask you that next.
There was a Judicial Watch report about a Hezbollah training camp about 30 miles south of here.
Right.
That's a scary thing.
It is a scary, and they're all over the place. Tennessee's got them, Virginia's got them.
Right. And so, but and we get, I get a lot of crap for people calling it asylum fraud and say, oh, well, how do you know? And the case that really, I really started diving deep into this. Everybody remember back in November, if you go out about 5 hours west of here in this area of New Mexico called the Boot Heel in Hidalgo County, you will have the most remote border crossing. It's not even a port of entry. It's just a border crossing at Antelope Wells.
Okay.
And Antelope Well, there are DHS field ops people there, and there is, but it's joint DHS field ops and Border Patrol. They're right there at the same spot. And a little Guatemalan girl died. Her name was Jacqueline Calmaquin.
Okay.
And this was, she was the first of the migrant children to die in this latest wave of caravans.
Okay.
And I didn't make the call originally, but I very quickly said, you know what? If it was a clear case of asylum fraud. I said, well, how do you know? Well, first of all, if you are fleeing something that entitles you to asylum, why do you leave your wife and 4 younger children back home in Guatemala?
Right.
What are you fleeing if you're willing to leave the more vulnerable people back home? Second, international asylum refugee law says you're supposed to ask for asylum in the first safe country you get to. Mexico even offered them asylum. They turned it down. So
that's interesting. So it's not Mexico refusing them; it's them refusing Mexico.
They turned down Mexico, and so why would they do that? Well, the Washington Post, the New York Times, those paragons of impartial journalism went down and said, "Why'd they go? Why did they go?" And they said, and the family didn't lie. They said, "Oh, they went there to work." The little girl was so excited that eventually she would be able to work alongside her father. So it was very clear that there was no reason that fits within our asylum laws for them to be traveling here. They just wanted a job. Now, again, I do not fault a father for wanting to provide for his children, and it is absolutely a tragic occurrence when a little girl dies. But you don't drag children 2,000 miles across the Sonoran Desert. I've been to Antelope Wells. The water is toxic. You actually can't drink the water. It's infected naturally with Legionella. It will kill you. It is the most desolate, remote portion of our southern border that has a border crossing. And if this father had been a U.S. citizen and had left the child in the back of a hot car to go in, and he's trying to provide for families, so he could go steal groceries or do something like that, we would charge him with felony murder. Because if somebody dies in the commission of if somebody dies in the commission of a felony, you get charged with felony murder. Even if you didn't kill them, but if somebody dies while you're doing that, so you could legitimately charge the father with felony murder if he's a U.S. citizen. Why are we, he clearly was involved. It is a 4th-degree felony to lie to a federal official. When you say, I'm claiming asylum, when in reality, all you're doing is coming to work. So he engaged in fraud the moment he showed up, and I don't know what documents he signed. That would be a separate instance of fraud. That would be a separate felony. And his daughter dies in the process.
Nothing gets done.
And so, so I went out there a little bit and said, look, I think if you send a signal by saying, look, if you want to come here, that's one thing. Don't drag your children across the desert. But the reason they're dragging their children across the desert is because that is how they game the system. The coyotes and the guias are telling them in the Central America, bring your kids and you get guaranteed entry to the United States. And that's not wrong. That is how, because the system is so broken, you bring your kids, you claim asylum, and you get a 2.5-year process. And by the way, if you and your wife come over with the small child, that's 2.5 years is enough time to produce another anchor baby. In case your first asylum fraud scheme fails, well, eventually that child is born on the soil under our incorrect interpretation of 14th Amendment. That child's a U.S. citizen, allegedly, and therefore they can sponsor you under chain migration 21 years from now.
Yeah.
Another part of our broken system, and in fact, that part of our broken system is the reason that there are 700 kids living in Palomas, Mexico, across from Columbus, Mexico. They cross the border every single morning with their birth certificates and get a taxpayer-funded bus ride up to the Deming Public Schools, free breakfast, subsidized federal lunch, and then a free bus ride back home at taxpayer expense. Well, at the